An article from the New York Times quotes, "A routine trip to run errands almost cost Catherine Dean her life. Just as Miss Dean of suburban Maryland drove underneath a bridge on the Capitol Beltway, a large chunk of concrete fell from the structure, crushing the hood of her car and smashing the windshield. Her lawyer said, 'It concerns me that we have this focus on our aging infrastructure only when you have pieces of concrete falling on a motorist. This should not be the case.' Now that the negative team agrees on our topicality being within the scope of our resolution, that being the improvement of bridge conditions as well as infrastructure in the United States, I'd like to respond to their significance." The opposing side said improving the conditions of our bridges would be quote-unquote detrimentally harmful. They said the coronavirus would have a major impact on construction, as our construction workers are or will be possibly infected, sick, and quarantined. They also said if the plan were to take place, it should at least be postponed. But there are two things I'd really like to point out here, further reasoning why this is a big enough issue for change to be necessary. One, the coronavirus will remain. The coronavirus will remain. This worldwide pandemic is definitely a scary thing, but the pandemic will remain until we have an effective vaccine. Precautions, restrictions, and so forth will all be present until there's a guaranteed cure, and there are many predictions as to when an effective vaccine will be available, but to emphasize how long this may take, Anthony Fauci, director of the National Institute of Allergy and Infectious Diseases, says, "New vaccines typically take years to earn approval, so can we really expect a coronavirus vaccine to be ready by summer 2021? The government has in fact recognized this and is clearly wanting to slowly reopen the economy again. This is because it is necessary. It is significant enough for change. Businesses are starting to reopen, people are starting to regain their income. It is important to start now. What is the point of sitting back and watching failing infrastructure?" Which really goes into my next point. Postponing is not effective. Postponing is not effective. The negative side is acting like postponing the fixing of bridges will solve anything, but in reality it is really not effective. Bridges take a long time to fund and to make, and so it is not like as soon as this plan begins order, there will be bridges made left and right that are apparent. It is a process that requires certain procedures. That is why we need to take action now to ensure the safety of our citizens and economy and give them relief that this is on its way. Moving into our inherency, the opposing side is arguing that my team's plan is not necessary because there are already being plans put into place. They argued with the Fix America's Transportation Act. Basically, with the Fix America's Transportation Act, it gives states the funding they need to continue to improve infrastructure. But there's one question I'd like to point out here and ask, and that is, then why are our bridges not being improved? And that's because state money is not enough to support all of its infrastructure. One, bridges are expensive. Bridges are expensive. Multiple studies were done by Washington State Department of Transportation about the expenses of different types of infrastructure. Looking at just bridge costs and just bridge costs alone, it costs about $67 million per lane mile, further answering why states have not taken action with their given funding. The opposing side also argued that Trump has expressed a special interest in laying down $1 trillion for the purpose of infrastructure. My team is all for this plan, and we hope it gets passed, and we hope it's acted upon. However, Trump has expressed this before the whole pandemic got really serious, and he has only expressed interest, not an exact plan. This takes form of structural inherency, which is an absence from the government that prevents things from happening. I'm sure laying down $1 trillion right now during this time of crisis with the coronavirus is not the top of his priorities right now. That is why my team wants to start smaller with gas tax, but that gets into our plan, which we will talk about later. To conclude, the conditions of our bridges are in bad condition. People take a certain risk every single time they cross them. You may not think of it like that right now, but neither did the people who have died or have been injured because of them. The best way to ensure the safety of our economy and citizens is to start improving our infrastructure now.